Hey folks, this is Kalani. Do you love puzzles? How do you feel about a brain jellyfish mount that can hold up to 4 extra players and it goes faster for everyone who decides to hop on board? If that sounds cool or exciting, or you just want the next super special secret mount, have I got a guide for you. We'll go through really quickly and easily to make sure you can get your hands on this one as soon as possible. As a quick note, you will require a party of 5 for some later stages of the guide, so drag a few friends along for the entire ride and have a blast working your way through it all. An underwater...
How many of you can accurately predict the future? How many of you think that you have the knowledge and ability to expose those predictions to the public on a mass scale? How would you do that? Would you write a book? Would you write a song? Would you paint your predictions? Make a movie? A television series? I got it. A video game, right? But what would be the intent of doing this? Would this be a way to warn people about things to come? To desensitize them to the stresses of incoming events? To give those who are awake an edge in the real world? Or is it intended to normalize evil? To get people used to immorality? To accept defilement and embrace the darkness? So I want to talk about this because predictive programming seems to be a topic that keeps popping up, and with all the clutter, the things that are being presented to you may seem quite confusing. But we're going to try and straighten that up right now. So what we have here, folks, is a mess. I mean, should we really concern ourselves with the minutia of every single piece of media that is put out? One would be a fool to ignore it all. So, how do we discern the difference between good old-fashioned entertainment from what people label as predictive programming? Because some things are not always what they seem to be. Now, I want to define 3 terms that I believe should be understood when it comes to this subject. Number 1, predictive programming, although it has no official definition, it is a term used to describe reoccurring elements, intentionally placed in media as a reference to a future event, usually tragic events. These are subtle references that are intended to subliminally desensitize you so that when the event occurs, your reaction is passive. For example, references to 9/11. If there is any movie, TV show, music out there that has predictive programming in reference to 9/11 prior to 9/11, then that idea didn't work at all. It didn't stop 9/11, no one would have been able to recognize the warning, and it sure didn't sweeten the blow. The only thing that anyone can get from those references today is that perhaps it was a planned event, not a predicted one. And you
ODD TV.
1949, Porky Pig and Charlie Dog cartoon.
Look! What's that? Look! It's the towers! They're falling! Ah!
1963, Wonder Woman comic book cover. 1970, 30 Seconds Over New York, book by Robert Bacard. 1973, Godzilla vs. Megalon, movie poster. 1973, Superman comic. 1975, Cracked magazine cover. 1976, 9/11, a book by Thomas Chastain. 1976, Sesame Street magazine cover. 1976, Spidey Super Stories comic book cover. 1978, Super Friends TV show, the episode entitled Monolith of Evil. 1978, Dr. John, City Lights album cover. 1979, Meteor movie poster. 1979, Supertramp, Breakfast in America album cover. 1979, Saga, Images at Twilight album cover. 1979, Pakistan International Airlines ad. 1983, Def Leppard, Pyromania album cover. 1983, a book by Jose Borja. 1985, G.I. Joe, Episode 46.
You just stand right there, Sonny. Look straight ahead and hold still while we scan you.
Hey! Transaction approved. Subject's retinal scan matches no known dissident, subversive, or enemy of state on file. Have a nice day.
Hey! Come back here! This money ain't no good! It's U.S. dollars! Absolutely worthless!
1986, Daredevil comic book cover. 1986, Real Ghostbusters, Season 1, Episode 12. 1986, Dream Machine.
There's computers where the resolution is so high that you can never tell that it was ever touched by anything, which raises the whole question of photography as evidence of anything. I don't even think people are aware of how much computer graphics is used today. There's just a whole question now of what is real.
Create a new reality by adding an erupting volcano to the San Francisco skyline. Or remove the World Trade Center from the New York City skyline.
1987, The Squeeze movie cover. 1987, cover of Fortune International magazine.
Look! It's Koopa's tower!
1994, Iron Man cartoon, Season 1, Episode 5.
Unidentified warplane sighted heading for New York City. Our detection system shows nothing. Mayday! Mayday! New York is under attack! Intercept and destroy!
A force field is shielding the warplane. It's getting through.
It is time. We will now strike at the heart of American defense and destroy the Pentagon with one swift and deadly blow.
1994. 1994, Viceland magazine article. 1994, Friends intro debut. 1994, Deathstroke, the Terminator comic book cover. 1995, The Tick, Season 1, Episode 12.
We are under attack! Things so monstrous! Terror unleashed from the sacred cotton candy place of our dreams! If anyone is out there listening, get out of town before it gets to you! And I'm out of here!
1995, Hackers.
Beat that.
1990.
Now, there is one more term that is not used that often, and I think this is what some people mean when they discuss predictive programming, and that is the drip effect. Unlike predictive programming, the drip effect does not prepare you for an event. It is designed to mold one's character. In the Oxford Reference Library, the drip effect is defined as, in theories of media effects, the notion that the mass media contribute towards gradual changes in the long term, either in individual attitudes or behavior, example among heavy viewers of television, or in the form of social changes alongside other social forces. I mean, this is really what we're talking about here, folks. Long-term effects, right? You see, it's one thing to have satanic imagery in a music video. It's another thing to have that theme repeated over and over in a very short period of time. So make no mistake, folks, these methods are real. This stuff is out there. Mainstream news uses these techniques most effectively. The trouble I think people are experiencing is trying to interpret if the messages dripped into mass media are intended to simply help us or hurt us. I know people say, well, they want to desensitize us and get us used to things we would normally have difficulty accepting. Yes, that's exactly the point. But keep in mind, folks, none of these things would be possible without us making them trendy. You think it's a coincidence that there are, you know what I'm gonna do? I took it upon myself to gather a list of newly released and upcoming films and television series that you may find interesting. So what I have done is, I have composed a playlist of movie and television series trailers. Now, I wanted to be a bit creative with this, so I took the titles of each production and listed them in an order that somewhat tells a story with looking just at the titles alone.
Zerg. When it comes to video game species, they get a bad rap. They're the most memeable alien race in video game history, so much so that there's a special Google search when you type in Zerg Rush. But anyone who's played StarCraft knows that the Zerg are by far the least sexy aliens in the galaxy. When you compare them to the other races like the Protoss, super techie, ultra powerful, or even the Terrans, the scrappy humans just trying to make their way in the wild west of outer space, the Zerg are just like these weird insectoids. And we're not talking a bunch of Jiminy Crickets up in space. These guys are like that huge spider that crawls out of the drain while you're trying to brush your teeth in the morning. Ugh, seriously, has this ever happened to you? It is terrifying. Just turn on the water and hope that it washes the spider back down into the depths where it came from. Back, you dread beast, leave my Mentadent alone. What makes the Zerg feel particularly alien to us humans, though, is that they don't act as individuals. They're a hive mind. We're used to being unique and special flowers, having our own thoughts and opinions, but in a hive mind, there is no blue hair and emo eyeliner for Zerg adolescents. No elite Zerg driving hybrids in the HOV lane while the rest of us Zerg are stuck in traffic. Everyone is the same. It's like one shared consciousness across everyone in the species. And in a world where we value individuality so much, no wonder we look down on the Zerg. We see the Zerg as a mindless mass of units that act without thinking. But hold on a second. What if I told you that we have more in common with the Zerg than you think? More in common with the Zerg than we do the Protoss, or even the Terrans, who are human! At the end of this episode, you're gonna have a newfound appreciation for the buggiest race in space, or the newfound hopelessness towards the state of humanity. Maybe a little bit of both.
You have to be one of them in order to survive here. You can't just walk around, free thinking and knowing, it doesn't mean you know all the things, but knowing a lot of stuff, knowing it's fake, knowing it's the Truman Show, knowing it's a joke. You can't just walk around, like that, seeing through everything, seeing through everyone. Eventually it's going to get to you. Not being able to trust anyone because they're owned by the hive. So here's what happens with the hive. They're acting like they're your friend, and all of a sudden they manifest on you. Right? But it's not them. They've been triggered by remote control. Other people are looking at you through the eyes of that one because they're all connected.
As it is with the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, because, well, very, very few people pay attention at all to them. Hardly any resistance was put up against net neutrality rules, and that was a fairly big media story. Almost no one said anything about the mergers between the giant telecoms and the general complete takeover of communications. There really wasn't any resistance to the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which opened up a whole can of worms, a whole set of Pandora's boxes with the NSA and everyone else. But now they've opened up the floodgates to massive corporate control over our lives, a total surveillance system on the part of government agencies and their contractors, and the very near blanketing of the entire population.
Literally, of everyone in the world. Literally, of everyone in the world. Autonomous vehicles, smart city energy grids, transportation networks, and water systems. Immersive education and entertainment will come from the cloud. The driving force of the 21st century will be powerful processing, centralized in the cloud, and wirelessly connected to thin clients.
All of whom will be saturated with gigahertz signals literally everywhere they go on the planet, and no one has permission.
The United States will be the first country in the world to open up high-band spectrum for 5G networks and applications. And that's damn important.
No wonder that he gives a no-holds-barred, full-force push to usher in 5G everywhere upon everyone, to swiftly and fully silence any and all dissenters, to ignore all the real questions, and to make sure that the safety data, to make sure that safety studies don't even happen.
Unlike some countries, we do not believe that we should spend the next couple of years studying what 5G should be or how it should operate. We won't wait for the standards. Turning innovators loose is far preferable to expecting committees and regulators to define the future.
And to make sure that questions about the biological effects of non-ionizing radiation are kept to an absolute minimum, off the table, out of the public eye, and nowhere near the FCC conversation.
Must be mobile fiber. 10 to 100 times faster than what we're used to today. We need to speed the deployment of 5G here on our shores. Yes, 5G will connect the Internet of Everything. If something can be connected, it will be connected in a 5G world. Of hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers, you can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet
Every
to be
single
imagined.
device and appliance in manufacture is being fitted with a two-way communication device, and it sends data back. Spying and surveillance is completely built in. It's a total default, and it's the given. Location tracking, health data, audio and visual recordings, text, and everything else is going to be continually collected. And Tom Wheeler of the FCC freely admits it. He thinks it's great because it's going to make everything faster, and it's going to make more money.
We take our most significant step yet down the path to our 5G future.
Others have covered.
Yeah, so there's different aspects to artificial intelligence, and there's different aspects to transhumanism, which is what you're talking about there. Some people perceive that it's many, many, many years away, and some people perceive that, oh, you don't have to worry about it, it's never going to happen. They haven't really developed the computer power to give us all these problems. And that's not necessarily correct, because one of their goals is to upload our consciousness, our minds into these machines. I mean, sounds crazy, but that's actually one of the goals. We're not there yet, although they are alluding to, they do have an idea that they can do that a lot quicker than what we may have thought. However, where we are at the moment is we are definitely at a place where they can literally plug you into the internet, which is, just to give you a very simple way of understanding that. And what that scientist there is describing now. Yeah, and if you want to lead on with that mind reading rats there.
There you go.
Yeah, well, this is really what the experiment is. It's not just literally, what they do is they inject a mesh which interfaces in between your skull and your brain. And what it does is it's used to connect you to the internet. Okay, they've done the experiments on it. It's tolerated very well. And this rats was some of the early experiments on it. And what they did was they connected these rats via, they were separated by thousands of miles. And what they found was they could connect them to work as one. And they call it a brain net. And what they're really saying is that, well, to the listener, you'll understand that as the hive mind. Now, if people think this is somehow sci-fi or conspiracy theory, they're absolutely wrong, and they're way behind this, because this is here now. It's been done. It's been done in experiments, and it's been proven to work. And this is the technology. This is the first phase of technology that's going to come after the kind of AI goggles, the kind of Google virtual world stuff. After that is coming this stuff, and this is going to come in a lot sooner than you think. And quite frankly, it terrifies me. They are very dangerous. And I in the first lecture I gave, and I actually quoted UK professors. I think at least one we're going to mention in a second. And one of them wrote a book on it, and he actually put forward the idea that what we should do, we should experiment on people that want to commit suicide. In other words, we should do experiments that probably end up in their death. But the data we could get would be really, really useful for us, because we could move forward with our sort of transhumanist agenda. And, and to a sane human being that has any sense of morality or soul or feeling, that is absolutely horrifying. But this is the kind of mentality that you're dealing with. And really, it's a very sociopathic mentality, where there's really low or very little empathy for human beings. And they see us as an old model. They see us that they have to progress further from us, that we're nothing. We're kind of like the 1.0. They want to go on to the 2.0 and the 3.0 model. And quite frankly, I think they're insane, some of them.
So this one is The Guardian. Elon Musk wants to connect brains to computers with a new company. So is he talking about human brains now, or is he still working with rats?
No, his company is the business side of those experiments you saw. the mesh technology is the technology that he's developing, that he's talking about bringing out as a product for us, for you and me to use. Now, okay, putting aside the craziness of that and putting aside the fact, well, we might go, well, we don't want to use that. The reality is this: when you look at their models for this, their models don't allow you not to use this. You are going to have to move with this, quote unquote. Not least because you will not be able to keep up with the artificial intelligence itself, and it will price you out of the market. And his reaction is the Hegelian dialect, where he says, look, if we don't do this, we aren't going to be able to keep up with AI, and AI will dominate us and eventually will eradicate us. If you introduce a species which is more advanced, then the lower species eventually is subjugated and got rid of. And this is a very big worry in academic circles about this. And not everybody's on board with this AI kind of technology. But unfortunately, the leaders and the movers and shakers in this are being funded at the highest level and through governments. And this is a very, very big worry because it doesn't appear to be any common sense break on it. So let's look at one of the scientific reports. And this is from 2015, building an organic computing device with multiple interconnected brains. It says brain nets, i.e. networks formed by multiple animal brains cooperating and exchanging information in real time through direct brain-to-brain interfaces, could provide the core for a new type of computing device, an organic computer. Here we describe the first experimental demonstrations of such a brain net built by interconnecting 4 adult brain rats. We've talked about the coverage of this, but what they're saying there, a brain net, multiple animal brains, but what we're developing is an organic computer. At what point do they feel that animal brains are not sufficient for this and they need to look at some quote unquote higher form of brain matter? Well, this is it. Really, this is the work that's leading on to that. And as I've said, the decision's already been made. It's already done. And, and you've got Musk now, who's, with billions involved in these companies, setting this technology up to bring it so that your kids can be plugged in. And the models they talk about is that you are connected as an organic computer. Quote unquote conspiratory theories that's been around for many, 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 many years, decades. But the reality is we're now facing the reality of that. It is no longer a conspiracy. The science is done. They're rolling out the commercial aspect to this, and they're developing this. And you will see this. And this is the next step on from the virtual reality goggles. And this is why it terrifies me. And this is why I'm trying to wake people up, to use that horrible hackneyed phrase, is that people still feel this is many, many, many years away, 50 years away, 60 years away. One aspect of AI is, but this aspect is very, very close. And they're not going to stop with this. And the nature of this, once it becomes commercial and money's made from it, they're not going to stop from this. And of course, if you understand the bigger picture of where this sits, you understand why this is being pushed and how dangerous this technology can be. There are aspects of AI that's very good, but only when it's capped. And at the moment, there's no cap. They're just going to keep pushing forward with this.
Welcome to your future. A digitally interdependent, hyper-connected, networked world. Throw off the tethers of ordinary reality and join the digitized multitudes ruled by global e-governance. With your very own new world citizen of the People's Federated Republic of the Great Democratic United Global States Incorporated chip card. Just one chip is now a key to every relevant database you are in on Earth. We're taking identification to a technocratic level beyond Aldous Huxley's wildest dreams and George Orwell's nightmares. One chip.
I keep watching the news and seeing my books from 20, 25 years ago being read back to me. And if anyone doubts that there is an agenda for the world and that events that change human society are not random but long planned, they should read my books from the 1990s and then watch the bloody news. And what I've done this week is just got a series of headlines, and just by going through them, I'll connect the dots between them and show, because I was talking about this so long ago, that we're not dealing with a world of random events in terms of that which directs and changes human society. We're dealing with a long, planned transformation of human society to allow the few not just to manipulate the many in the end, but to completely control what people think and feel. And I'm going to start with one. I mean, you know, I saw this headline this week and, you know, you shake your bloody head. Alarm over talks to implant UK employees with microchips. Now, back in the early 1990s, I was writing in books about the plan, eventually, to microchip the population and connect them to a computer system, what has now become the global internet system, and to AI, so that basically we would be like tagged animals. And when the process began of microchipping domestic animals, I pointed out that actually this is a stepping stone to microchipping people, because it gets familiarity with microchipping as part of society. And people thought it was very funny. A lot of what I said 25, 30 years ago was, or even more recently, has been considered to be crazy. But it just turns out to happen. The penny might drop with some people eventually, that actually may not be as crazy as they thought. And so when I was in Sweden, speaking a few weeks ago, they have about 3,000 people in Sweden microchipped so far. They put the chips in, and that helps them to open doors and, you know, also start their cars, whatever. I mean, oh, that's fantastic. Give your freedom away. Become a tagged animal. But hey, I can open the door without pushing it. Lazy sod. And so now it's coming into Britain, and it's supposed to be everywhere. And this story is about the Confederation of British Industry, the employers' organisation, which represents loads and loads of businesses, saying that they're concerned that this microchipping of employees has begun, and the Trade Union Congress, the TUC, of course the amalgamation umbrella organisation of trade unions, has come out and said the same. And, you know, those people might have said, I'm sure many of them did, back in the 90s, if they heard that I was saying that there's a plan to microchip people, everybody, they said, oh, that's that Ike. He believes in reptiles, he's mad. And now they're coming out and complaining, hey, they're microchipping people. Well, I'll say to the CBI and to the TUC, especially the TUC, it's supposed to represent working people, get your bloody arses in gear and start doing some research and realise that if you are going to protect your workers, your members and employees from what is unfolding, then you need to get informed about what's happening and the fact that this has been planned a very, very long time. If it wasn't planned a long time, then how could I have known about it so long ago? And so this microchipping is part of a massive operation to connect the human mind and the human body to artificial intelligence and to this so-called smart grid, this electromagnetic electrical grid of information based on the internet, so that up to this point humanity has been controlled and manipulated by the control of information. The control of information has dictated people's perceptions, because perceptions are formed by information received. This next stage that we're now fast going into, please wake the hell up, people who haven't looked at this, for your kids' sake and your grandkids' sake, if not for your own. This grid is meant to connect to the human mind. So instead of manipulating information to dictate perception, a perception that suits the agenda. You give people their perceptions direct through microchips and nanomicrochips and through artificial intelligence. In fact, the human mind becomes artificial intelligence. And this is not me pulling it out the ether. This is what the crazies in Silicon Valley, who ultimately answer to the Pentagon, are telling us is going to happen. And they're selling it because, oh, it's a good thing. We'll be superhuman. No, we won't. We'll be subhuman. And every week now, headline after headline, story after story, is showing how this is moving on. So here's another headline. Exposure to cell phone and wireless radiation can reduce impulse control and cause violence. Now, this is something else. This is a scientific study, but it was in my books a long, long time ago. And it works like this. Every thought, every emotion, every expression of consciousness operates on a frequency, has its own frequency. So hatred is a frequency, love is a frequency, depression is a frequency, joy is a frequency. Different frequencies, obviously. And so you are broadcasting that frequency, generating it in the different perceptual states that we go into. But this is the key. It comes the other way too, or can. If you can work out the frequencies on which these different emotions operate, and they did that a long time ago, as my books have shown over the years, then if you can pound out that frequency across an area or whatever, you can trigger people to manifest that emotion or that state of mind. Old hat to people who've researched this, is that you can get people in a state of violence, in a state of agitation, in a state of anger, in a state of rioting, by just pounding out the frequency that triggers that reaction in the brain. The brain processes information. In effect, it processes frequencies. And so if you pound that frequency out, the brain will decode it into the perceptual state that that frequency represents.